there, folks. It's Tim from Secret Fire Books, and I just wanted to show off some cool stuff that I picked up recently. It's actually my birthday in a couple of days, and so a week or so ago, I figured I'd indulge myself, and I went onto eBay and went shopping for some vintage paperbacks. And I was lucky to come across someone who was offering up two different lots with books by some of my favorite authors. And so I figured I'd swoop in there and pick those up before anyone else had the chance to get them. And they just arrived in the mail a couple days ago, so I thought, since I'm putting up videos on YouTube now and I'm talking about books on YouTube, I'm kind of honor bound to show off my book hauls. And I don't know if I'll make this a regular thing, but it is something really cool, so I thought I'd show it off for everybody to see. And the first book is actually something I'm not quite familiar with, but I have heard of before, and that is a Doc Savage novel. It is Doc Savage, The Dagger in the Sky. And you can see in the corner it's by Kenneth Robeson, which, if you know anything about the Doc Savage series, and it's basically all I know about Doc Savage, is that Kenneth Robeson is, it's actually a house name that a bunch of authors back in the 30s wrote under when they were writing stories for Doc Savage magazine. So every Doc Savage author wrote under the name Kenneth Robeson. But apparently this book is won by a gentleman named Lester Dent, who a lot of people say is the best Doc Savage writer, one of the most prolific Doc Savage writers. There's like over 200 of these novels that all originated from Doc Savage magazine. I don't know if it's any good, but it should be some old-fashioned pulp adventure, so I'm excited to get around to it eventually. And the next author that we picked up was someone by the name of Arthur O'Friel, someone I'd never heard of before. Friel, I don't know. But we have The Pathless Trail by Arthur O'Friel. Looks like some more old school kind of jungle adventure pulp nonsense. I'd never heard of this guy before, and I looked it up, and there's actually precious little I could find out about these books online. It seems like they've kind of dropped off the face of the earth after they republished these in the 60s. I don't know if they're still in print anymore. But yeah, we have The Pathless Trail by Arthur O'Friel. And then Tiger River by Arthur O'Friel. I don't know if they're in the same series or they just have similar settings. White Indians and Green Men, a great, fantastic swashbuckler. I don't know what that means, but it sounds interesting. So then we get to the really good stuff I was really excited for. The first lot was a bunch of Michael Moorcock novels. I love stuff by Michael Moorcock. And the first book that really caught my eye is this just gorgeous paperback edition of The Knight of Swords, which is the first book of the Coram Chronicles series by Michael Moorcock. One of my favorite books of all time. It's in just perfect condition. I don't think it's even been read before. So this is book one of the Coram Chronicles, and there's two trilogies that make up the Coram Chronicles. There's the Sword Ruler trilogy and the Silver Hand trilogy. So this is the first book of the Sword Ruler trilogy. See that gorgeous, gorgeous cover art. Just in almost perfect condition. I love this. So happy I picked this up. And hopefully, or I was hoping that I could get a full series, or at least the full first trilogy, but no such luck. We just got the third book in the series, which is The King of the Swords. Even though it says on the cover that it's The Chronicles of Coram, book number 1. Little typo there. And then on the back, it clearly says, this is the third volume in the 3-volume saga of Coram and the Sword Rulers. So that's interesting. I love the cover art. I can't find who the artist is. They don't have it printed in any of the books. It's unfortunate. And then the last book I got in that series is actually book 4, so it's the first book of the Silver Hand trilogy, The Bull and the Spear, which I have yet to read. I've read all of the Sword Ruler trilogy. I've never read the Silver Hand trilogy. I know it takes place like several years after the end of the first trilogy, so I'm looking forward to getting that eventually. And the next Moorcock novel in the set was Jewel in the Skull. This is the first book of the Dorian Hawkmoon series, also known as the Runestaff series. And this one is not in good shape at all. I opened it a while ago, and the spine just cracked in half. So I need to be very careful with this. But this is, I believe, a first American edition of the Jewel in the Skull. So that's pretty cool. And then we have its sequel, Sorcerer's Amulet, which now is called the Mad God's Amulet. It was reprinted as the Mad God's Amulet, but the first edition is Sorcerer's Amulet. Never seen these purple sprayed edges before. It's interesting. Never seen that color, an edge painting before. But it's a pretty cool cover. It's more of a Conan cover than a, that definitely is not Hawkmoon. That looks nothing like the character. It looks a lot more like Conan. But it's a cool, kind of simplified looking cover. I don't know who the artist is again. I don't know what they had against printing the artist's name on these books. But yeah, it's a nice little early edition of the Mad God's Amulet. And then next up is the Champion of Garethorn, which is part of the Castle Brass series, book 2 in the Castle Brass series, which is either a sequel or a spin-off to the History of the Runestaff series, which I've only just started reading. I've only ever read Jewel in the Skull. I'll have to get back to it eventually. The artwork itself, it leaves something to be desired in my opinion, but I really like the layout of the cover, how you have it kind of framed with the author's name at the top and then the title in the bottom. I think that's pretty cool looking. We also have book 3 in the Castle Brass series, The Quest for Tanalorn. I like the colors, at least, on that cover. This one is not in very good shape at all. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, this is in terrible shape. I gotta be really careful with this. And then we have, book 3 of the Eternal Champion saga, which is The Dragon and the Sword. This is the Arakose series, or the Eternal Champion series. I believe it's a trilogy that Moorcock wrote. They're a little thicker, a little wordier than his usual fantasy novels. But this is book 3 in the Eternal Champion series. I'll have to get around to reading those eventually. Then we have what I believe is a standalone of his, The Ice Schooner. That is a gorgeous Boris Vallejo cover. Absolutely beautiful. The book itself is a little beat up, but it's in pretty good shape. The only thing I know about this book is that it's sort of this post-apocalyptic story that takes place in a future Earth where everything is frozen. So it's like Waterworld, but instead of everything flooded, everything is frozen, and we need these special ice ships to move around. So that'll be interesting. And then the last Michael Moorcock novel in the set was The Masters of the Pit, which was originally published under the title The Barbarians of Mars. Let's see. I don't know if you can focus in on that. Barbarians of Mars. It is book 3 in the famous Warriors of Mars trilogy, which I believe is sort of Michael Moorcock's take on the kind of John Carter of Mars, Sword and Planet style of storytelling. Also has those weird purple edge-painted edges that I've never seen before. Apparently the main character of this story is named Michael Caine, so if I ever get around to reading these, I'm not going to be able to read them without picturing, elderly English gentleman actor Michael Caine running around fighting, giant sea snakes and swinging around a sword. That'll be kind of funny. And moving on to the next 10 books in the set by my favorite fantasy author of all time, Mr. Robert E. Howard. We have The She-Devil by Robert E. Howard. It's a really cool cover right there. And you see it and you think, oh, they must be pirate stories. And they are. But I looked it up, and these are actually, these were originally printed in Spicy Adventure magazine. I think that's what it was called. Where did it say? Yep, yeah. Spicy Adventure Stories magazine. Which basically means that it's kind of like the pulp version of a trashy romance novel. These short stories. So yeah, that's a thing I have now. And then moving on, we have something a little more familiar, which is Solomon Kane. This is, I believe, one of the first printed paperback editions of the Solomon Kane stories, with just this awesome, gloomy portrait of Solomon Kane by an artist by the name of Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns? Jeff Jones. Jeff Jones, yeah. Really nice cover art. Really simplistic, but really, really creepy. Gives you that ominous horror vibe that Solomon Kane was all about. And then we got some more Solomon Kane stories with The Moon of Skulls by Robert E. Howard, with another really creepy looking Jeff Jones cover. But I know what you're thinking. You know, if you have all these Robert E. Howard books, where's the Conan? And we do have some Conan. We have Conan the Usurper by Robert E. Howard and L. Sprague de Camp, with that gorgeous, just gorgeous and iconic Frank Frazetta cover art depicting Conan in the cell at the beginning of the story, The Scarlet Citadel, which is one of the best Conan stories, in my opinion. This one is very fragile. It is falling apart at the seams. Oh my gosh, the spine is just is slipping off of this thing. I've got to be really careful with this. Oh boy, but it is really nice to have one of these. This is one of the original Lancer paperback editions of Conan when they were first reprinting all of Robert E. Howard's material. And then we have another Conan paperback, Conan the Avenger, which is actually very little. It has very little to do with Robert E. Howard. It's basically just a Conan pastiche novel by L. Sprague de Camp, who, as a Conan fan, I have a sort of love-hate relationship with L. Sprague de Camp. Long story short, he edited Conan when they were putting the stories together in these Lancer editions back in the 60s, and he inserted a lot of his own material. You just don't do that when you're compiling another writer's work. And so this one does contain part of the Hyborian Age essay that Robert E. Howard wrote to sort of explain the lore and history of the Hyborian Age, but that's the only contribution of Howard's in this book. The rest of it is just a short novel by L. Sprague de Camp. It could be good. I don't know. I've liked some of L. Sprague de Camp's work before, but we'll see. Then next, and I'm really excited about this one, another Robert E. Howard book, Sowers of the Thunder. Sowers of the Thunder. It is a collection of Howard's his historical fiction, specifically the ones that were written during written about the Middle East during the Middle Ages. So you have European adventurers and crusaders having, these kind of swashbuckling adventures in the Middle East and the Far East. You have another gorgeous Jeff Jones cover, and it's actually illustrated throughout. They have these little illustrations throughout. Really cool. Oh, and then what is this? What is this? Oh, an advertisement for Kent cigarettes. Oh, and it just fell out. Oh gosh. Okay. Gotta be careful with these old paperbacks. Who is the illustrator for this? Jeff Jones did the cover art. Who did the interior illustrations? It says on the back. Text illustrated by Roy G. Krenkel. So yeah, he did a lot of the sort of little portraits and black and white illustrations on the inside. They're really cool. So yeah, just a really awesome little paperback. There's a YouTuber by the name of Grammaticus Books who really recommended this book. He did a video a while ago where he just sang this book's praises, said it's one of the greatest things that Howard ever wrote. So I'm really excited to check this out eventually. And check out Grammaticus Books. He has a great YouTube channel. Next up, we have The Iron Man by Robert E. Howard. And it says fantasy adventure at the top, but it is most definitely not. These are actually boxing stories. There's a collection of just a few of Robert E. Howard's boxing stories. He loved boxing. He was a semi-professional boxer, and he wrote pulp stories about boxing, about characters who traveled around the world boxing in different arenas. And this one has a few illustrations as well. There's an illustration right there. Very cool, very cool. Look forward to reading that as well. And then we have Tigers of the Sea, which is a Cormac MacArt collection. Cormac MacArt, ooh, another advertisement for Kent cigarettes. Cormac MacArt was a character Howard wrote for another bunch of historical stories. He is a pirate living during the Middle Ages, raiding the coast of England with these Vikings. If you couldn't tell from that ridiculous horn helmet on the front cover. Another front cover by Jeff Jones. He does some really good work on these Robert E. Howard's volumes. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Worms of the Earth, which is a collection of Bran McMorn stories. Another awesome Jeff Jones wraparound cover. This one has a few sporadic illustrations as well. Facing down some subhuman-looking characters on that one. But yeah, Bran McMorn, another one of Robert E. Howard's big historical characters, another precursor to Conan, I believe, who is a Celtic warlord and king who led his people against the Romans, as you can see on the cover there. And supposedly, some of Howard's best stories had to do with Bran McMorn. Kings of the Night was apparently a really great one. Worms of the Earth, the title story, is talked about all the time as one of his best horror stories. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. And so yeah, that's all I've got for now. It's a nice little haul of sword and sorcery and adventure goodness. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know what you think of the books, if you've read any of them. And yeah, until next time, keep reading.